Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever time of day it is. Thank you for tuning in to Conversations with Dr. Don. For you viewers who have not seen the show before, you're watching Conversations with Dr. Don. The title of today's episode is What's Important on November 20th, 2013. My guest this evening is Charlie Weaver, an old gym buddy. I met him at the gym and I've been haranguing him for months now to come on the show and be a guest. Finally you're here. And then I asked you for a brief bio about your life, what you've been up to until now. And I got this tome and I thought, we're going to need 3 hours just to go through this to find out who you are personally. I was very impressed with your resume. How are you feeling right now?
Good. Good. Feeling well.
Nervous?
No.
What's wrong with I'm nervous. But I'm always nervous when I start a show. But it's good to see you here. And we're going to just talk about the first half of the show, who you are personally, and I won't get too personal. And if I ask you a question you don't want to answer, you can tell me to get lost or whatever. And or I can usually sense out pretty good what's appropriate and not appropriate to ask. So let's get started here. Your complete name, your whole name?
It's Charlie Weaver Jr.
Charlie Weaver Jr.
Yeah.
Charlie, is that short for Charles?
No, it's actually Charlie.
Oh.
Yeah, I am the seventh child of a seventh child of a seventh child.
Are you really?
I am.
Wow. What does that mean for you?
Well, supposedly the seventh child of a seventh child has magical powers. So I figured the seventh child of a seventh child of a seventh child has some really special powers.
Lay it on me. You have any evidence to show that that's true?
I do the genealogy in the family.
Really?
Yes, and I know that to be true.
Huh, you got an example, one or two, to show me that that's true?
Well, my mother was the seventh child. She had she was the seventh child, and interestingly enough, as the seventh child, she was somewhat the parenting child as a seventh child.
Mm-hmm.
And her mother was a seventh child. Lila, of course, going back in through genealogy, I'm getting different spellings of my grandmother's name depending on which census you look at. The only way I'm able to connect her is through my grandfather, whose name was Judge B. Burgess. So we were able to connect those. They spelled her name one way in the 1910, different in the 1920, 1930, and so I find her through him.
Interesting. My oldest daughter is involved in that, and she drives me nuts about every 2 months, so she's found some new information. But it kind of contradicts what she sent me a month ago, and I'm not sure today whether the black part of my heritage is from Nigeria or from Chad. But it varies. But we can't find the red anywhere because it wasn't fair to own that back in those days in New Orleans, you know. But we did trace some European back, German from my mom's side, and from Papa's side, we called the old man Papa. I'm the 12th child. It was either France or Portugal or something. Anyhow, you and my daughter can talk about genealogy, but not me.
Now, interesting enough, I am being the seventh child of the seventh child. There were actually 9 of us. One of my brothers lived to be maybe 2 months old, and others lived to be like 2 days or 4 days old. The sister was 4 days old, which got me to number 7. Where we grew up on a farm in South Georgia, there was a family down the road who, when I saw them again in 1996, they had 26 children.
Oh my gosh.
And she outlived her husband.
26. And I was going to brag about being the 12th child in our family of 12, so that's nothing.
26 children and about 4 boys.
All the rest girls.
All the rest girls. Oh. He was a very large farmer, so I think he was trying to get field hands, so to speak. We kept coming over with the girls, so they had to do the work.
Yeah. So you were born in Georgia?
Tifton, Georgia.
Tipton, Georgia, in 1944.
1948.
48.
48's enough. No, sir.
Okay. And anything significant about your cultural heritage worth sharing with the viewers?
My mother was a big, I was actually, myself and 4 brothers and 2 sisters were raised by my mother. My father I saw for the first time when I was about 14 or 15 years old because we located him. He showed up and he was in our lives from a distance for maybe a couple of years, and he disappeared again for another 15 years. Finally surfaced again in Delray Beach, Florida. Of course, at this point, kids are all grown.
Yeah.
So we really don't have it. But my mother really stressed education. Her thing was everybody should be, education was our ticket out of the cotton field, so to speak.
Sure.
Which is, we did pick cotton back. I started when I was about 6 years old in a 5-pound flour sack.
Did you really?
Yeah. When I was 9 years old, I picked 209 pounds of cotton. That was a big deal. That was a whopping $6 that day. Yeah. So she moved us to Florida when I was about 12 years old because we had relatives in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when we located our father. And he passed in 1991, in July of 91. My mother lived with my sister in Maryland, and she passed the following year in 2002, 1992, in August. So I did not realize, as kids, that the bond between them, with him, was still in existence, because though his death took the wind out of his sails, even though she hadn't seen him for years and he didn't know that close.
Gosh,
So
yes.
that was that connection. And that connection exists between myself and my sisters and brothers, where one lives in West Palm Beach, one in North Carolina, one in Manhattan, one in Maryland, Southern California, Nebraska, and North Carolina, myself here.
And you've covered the country.
And we get together every other year.
That's wonderful. Oh, how beautiful.
Last year was Nebraska. Next year we'll be in Maryland.
And it's good every year.
It's good every year.
That's wonderful.
We're close and always have remained close.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's kind of rare anymore.
Well, people didn't believe my younger brother and I. My younger brother's only 11 months. He's 11 months, 3 weeks, a little less than 3 weeks younger than I am. When we moved to Florida, he and I talked all the time. People didn't realize that we were brothers because we talked to each other so much. Because that was unusual for brothers to talk to each other that way. But we did.
So, do you have a religious preference? Or not?
Well, no. I went through a lot of soul searching having to do with religion. When I was a kid growing up on the farm, we occasionally got to go to church, and it was the Oak Hill Baptist Church.
Yeah.
Well, that scared me. I would go to church and to hear that the preaching, the hellfire damnation from the pulpit and the mournful singing of the congregation, I'd go home that night and spend the night looking out the windows and crying because I didn't want those fires to burn me. Okay, that was my introduction to, I had to be saved, as I, say. Only way you can enter the kingdom of heaven is just you're born again of the water or whatever.
Where did you get that sensitivity that you showed there?
Well, the preacher. The assuring that I was going to burn in hell. I mean, the fire itself was the real. Of course, my sister and brother are sleeping. I think I'm a nut. I'm sitting here looking out the window because I didn't want to be burned by the fires. So years later, during that time, you had to make your robes to be baptized. You made these white robes, and they baptized you in the pond. And occasionally, that pond had a slippery bottom. So when they dunked somebody in the pond, it was a splash party. Yeah. It was funny. But kids teased you unmercifully guess who got baptized, you know? So I was a shy kid, and I just didn't want no part of that. So when we moved to Florida, I was in town for the first time, so I'd forgotten about these things until I realized that I have to get baptized before people get to know me well. They'll tease me. And I go to church. They stand up, open the door of the church. This was the Baptist church. They sit down. There are 5 people, and I wasn't there. I'm not going to go up there now. And this went on several times, so I forgot about it. So I go to college at Morehouse College, and a reverend, I had gone to several different churches. I went to a lot of different, trying to find something that felt good for me, that felt right.
Didn't terrify you.
Yeah, it didn't terrify me. I went to Seventh-day Adventist, I went to Catholic, I mean, you name it, I went to those churches. So Father Scott, Episcopal priest, came looking for one of my roommates who wasn't there. So when he left, I jumped out of my bed, caught Father Scott on the steps of the dorm, and said, Father Scott, I want to be baptized. Now, to my amazement, he looks at me and says, why? I thought, if I said this to a preacher, I'd have been down halfway the pond already. So he talked to me for half an hour and agreed to let me take instructions. So I went through instructions with Father Scott across the road from the campus, was the Canterbury House. And needless to say, I kept him on his knees a lot praying for me because of things that are coming out of my mouth. But on Mother's Day, 1967, I was baptized on the steps of the church, of the Canterbury House, really, and had the laying on of hands by the Archbishop of Atlanta at St. Philip's Cathedral. And then I thought, now what do I do? Okay, I've got that covered. What do I do now? So I went back to Florida, and I attended the Episcopal church there. I was attending the High Eucharist until my fiance went with me one time, and I got a call from a couple of people telling me that she wasn't supposed to take communion in the church, which was contrary to what I had learned from Father Scott. So I stopped going to the High Eucharist, and I went to the 8 o'clock Mass. And I did this for a while, and pretty soon I did my own study, or whatever. I didn't, and which is where I am today, is that I do Bible studies. I pretty much in a scholarly way, if you will, in a sense, you know. But the nature of God, whatever, I don't know. There's some things that can't get an answer for, so I don't rack my brain with looking for answers about things like, well, God created everything, so where did God come from? You know, those are blasphemous to some people anyway, so I don't do that. I leave religion to those who feel that they know it, and that's religion and usually politics. I just let's keep off the table.
What's your philosophy about life?
Life is pretty much like my father-in-law, who turned 100 years old on the 6th of November. I went to his birthday party in Show Low, Arizona. And I asked him, what is your secret to longevity? And he said, well, I just live life. He said, I wake up, I get up, I eat, I do play games or whatever I'm going to do, and I go to bed. I don't get too wrapped around the other people's dramas. He said, just kind of keep life simple. And then you can do eat a lot of things you want to eat if you leave the stress behind. So that's kind of my philosophy of life is love and be loved.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Your education, you've been to so many schools, and beyond the formal education, there's so much. We wouldn't even talk about that precisely unless there's something you want to say about
well,
that.
I like learning things, and my mother drilled into us this business of education such that there are 7 of us. All 7 of us, 7 graduate from high school. 6 have college degrees, and 3 of us have advanced degrees. One brother is an attorney and actually a domestic relations commissioner in South Florida, in Palm Beaches. So I just had this question. When I got a bachelor's degree, by the time I got a bachelor's degree, I had enough credits for 2. I had forgotten about getting the degree. I just taking courses to learn things.
I'm still a student.
I think I will always be a student. I mean, there is always something to learn.
The things you're saying are so fascinating. I find I'm going slow to let them sink in before I ask you my next question. And you're working now, and what do you do in your work today?
What I do in my work today is I work as a workforce, they call me lead workforce specialist. I lead about 11, 12 workforce specialists and re-employing, I'm making self-sufficient individuals who are on TANF and SNAP, who are clients of the Department of Human Services. They are referred to us. I'm a part of a consortium. It's 6 organizations that are nonprofits. It's a part of a consortium that have come together to do this. And that's kind of basically what we do every day. We receive clients now 5 days a week, and we give them individual attention in their job search.
So the title then is workforce
specialist. Yeah.
That I've never heard of that before. I've heard a little bit about it, but not defined as such. How long has that been in existence as a profession, a workforce specialist?
I guess as long as I've been in human resources, which is a lot of years. And it may have been different titles like workforce coordinator. Actually, it usually just fell under a recruiter. Sometimes it's kind of what a recruiter does in a sense. And I did this for, when I worked in aerospace at Pratt Whitney, I recruited internally and externally for 3.5 years. You know, we set up a job posting system, internal job posting system, and receive applications from internal people to try to fill jobs first internally before going to the outside to fill the jobs.
Did the bosses discover something in you that says, hey, Charlie would make a good workforce specialist?
I interviewed with Self-Enhancement Incorporated, SEI. SEI is a charter school, and it's more than just a charter school in itself. I mean, they follow their kids from the time they enter until they graduate from college. And their graduation rate and success rate is tremendous. They also provide a wraparound services for the families. This is basically for at-risk youth. At-risk youth is who this is developed for by Tony Hobson Tony Hobson Sr. And I'm a part of community family programs, which is the part of the wraparound services for not only the kids, but the families of those children who are at risk. And I work out at 122nd Street as a part of that program.
122nd Street in Portland?
In Portland, yes. 122nd. In the DHS building, we have one of the buildings in DHS where we work out of. But and I did not really know anything about SEI until I went there. But I went there not looking for a job as a workforce specialist, but as in-home safety and reunification specialist, somebody who helped parents and kids to stay in the home together, you know, to keep kids from leaving the home. And they interviewed me and said, you know, there's something interesting on your resume, and I had done field case management for workers' compensation, and this kind of fit with the case management they wanted out there, and asked me if I'd be interested in that. So I said yes, and in March, it'll be 2 years I've been out there doing that.
Is that a government agency?
Have I worked with a government agency?
Is this a government agency that you're with now?
No. We are working in partnership with a government agency, but we are a consortium of NAIA, Human Solutions, ERCO, Urban League, SCI, and Oregon Employment Department.
Where do you get your money from?
DHS. DHS funds this project for us to do that.
And you have how many people working for you or under you?
11, actually starting 12 in a few days.
Do they like you?
They love me. Too much sometimes.
I love it. I love it. I'm sure you're good at what you do, yeah. And you have a partner who I met Your wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, one of those things?
My wife, Janet.
You don't have a boyfriend?
She's whatever I need usually. You know, she's flexible that way.
How long you been together?
Oh, I've known her for about 22, 23 years now. Yeah. But we have been married since about eight years now. No, take that back. I get this right. 9 years.
She's going to see this and get on your case.
10 years on April 16th next year.
Do you have kids?
I have a son by a previous marriage who is in Washington, D.C., and she has a daughter and a granddaughter here from a previous marriage. Now, my son, I have 2 grandchildren, too, who are in Atlanta, Georgia. And one is a senior this year, and the other one is a sophomore in college studying architecture.
So they believe in education, too.
Very highly. You know, their mother has raised them as we call old school. These are good kids. When I ask him about a boyfriend or about a girlfriend, he says, I have things to do first. You know.
Are you learning from him?
They're good kids. As a matter of fact, the youngest turned 18 on the 16th of this month.
Do you hazard a guess about your own political persuasion? Are you left, right, center, or what, generally speaking?
I am probably more left. I wouldn't say extreme left, but I am definitely left, in the sense that I believe in that we might be judged better by how we care for the least of us, you know? Yeah, it's not about, you know, if we're gonna survive on Earth, it'd be nice to have somebody else here with me, so to speak, you know, as opposed to, I've got mine and that's all I care about.
Okay. Where'd you learn that? That's a religious upbringing or some other
my
source?
humble beginnings. I mean, it's just if you grew up on a farm. We grew up quite poor. Didn't know it though, because I have never eaten that well since. I mean, we lived, seriously, we had, everything grew wild in the woods that we grew stuff. So, I mean, food was not an issue. So as a kid, I really couldn't appreciate anything else that might have been going on. But that was really a good time for me, except I did not like working in the fields. I didn't like being on the farm until I left the farm, and I'd love to go back to the farm. I mean, while it was drudgery, you didn't make much money, but when you worked in the field, when the day was done, the day was done. There was no performance appraisal. Nobody said, you know, what you did, you got paid for. That's that. It's over.
What was Mom like?
Mom she was incredible, to say the least. She has instilled and talked to my sister and brother. I realized that she gave us all some life lessons to live by, you know, some training to live by. She believed that she could do anything that she wanted to do, and she instilled this in us as well. I remember one of my cousins was teasing her about being a woman, you know, when she was weaker. She picked up a 100-pound sack of fertilizer in her teeth to prove a point.
Oh.
Yeah, that's the kind of person she was, yes. Yeah, and she was very, very high on us doing better. She was an avid reader, and which is kind of instilled that in the rest of us as well. My oldest brother, as a matter of fact, this guy probably reads 2 or 3 books a week. I don't know. He's still at it. You know, just can't get enough of it. Of course, he's retired from the Air Force. I have a brother retired from the Army, and 2 actually from the Air Force. Me, I made Boy Scouts, but that was close enough.
Yeah. Do you have any memberships in political, social, or civic organizations worth mentioning? Any memberships that are worth mentioning? Some people do, some people don't.
I had a number in the HR, which I don't anymore, like SHRM and the local HR branch. But not really, not really. I do what I want to in relative to supporting certain organizations, but I don't necessarily go the
actually.
form of joining, no.
I'm a card carrier. I've got a loose leaf binder that holds the business cards, and I think I've got 3 pages, and each one holds about 12 cards of all the ACLU and SNCC and NAACP. I've joined about everything you can imagine. That's liberal or leftist or progressive. So I'm a joiner. Persons from the past alive today that you particularly look up to or admired besides your mother?
And sisters and brothers. They're 2 younger than I am. The youngest is 4 years younger. This is the attorney. But the others are, they look, my sister in particular, my oldest sister, I have a sister who's 2 years older than I am, whose birthday is on February 6th, mine's February 2nd. And the other sister's 2 years older than she is. Her birthday is February 9th. And a brother who is about 2.5 years older than that one, and then another 2.5 years older. So,
oh yeah, I know how that
so
goes.
there's a joke about who's going to take care of whom, because we're all there together. But they, to me, especially my older sister, looks to me like my mother. She has that, I don't mean necessarily physically looks like, but she lived with her until she passed. And it's almost as like transferring that spirit of who she is into her. Yeah. And that's, I mean, she's still kind of like mom to the rest of us in that sense.
Does she know how to give you a look?
Yeah, you know what the interesting thing about it is that when things kind of go south, when somebody has a difficulty or whatever in that sense, they call me.
Oh.
See, now that part of my mother I got in the sense of being able to help people resolve things. And she didn't really get into it. She gave you a few words and let you work that out, make a decision, which I think is one of the more difficult things that people struggle with now, and that is just making their own decisions. Because if we didn't have to make decisions, life was great. It's like being like a kid. You just go happy-lucky and, and let somebody else take care of that. But when you get to the point of having to make your own decisions, that can be a little tough if you don't have the practice at it.
Yeah.
And we got started at an early age.
And it wasn't modeled for you.
And yeah, right. If it wasn't modeled for you, you don't know what to do with that. But we got that at an early age.
You had a fortunate upbringing, didn't you?
I did, and I didn't realize how much until, much later in life.
Any historical figures, any names come to mind? I've been doing this so long, I've got a list of memorized in my head.
That I can think of, I got to meet Dr. King.
Did you really?
Yeah, at Morehouse, in my second year at Morehouse. Yeah, and yeah, you talk about charismatic or whatever. Yeah, he really was very much that way. It was when you were in his presence. I actually did some demonstrations, while in Atlanta, but.
Did you have a few words with him other than "Hello, Dr. King, how are you"?
Not much more than that, but of course there's just a throng of guys, everybody's around who wants a part of that as well.
Yeah, what a human being.
Benjamin E. Mays was the president of Morehouse College when I went there. So yeah, I got to meet with him, and then Hugh Gloucester followed him. Samuel Jackson was in my class, actually.
Samuel L. Jackson?
Yes. And even then he talked about being an actor, whatever. But, that's, it's back in history. I mean, without knowing all of them, the things that I know, some of the writers, like, well, not Shakespeare, the second most quoted writer in the English language is, I forget his name, but anyhow, writers, people who were able to put into words, things that just bring it out and actually put it into words, which is, I guess, what a poet does, is able to put those things into words. We pick up a card and we say, wow, that's what I was thinking. That's what I feel, and we buy the card. But if we thought about it enough, we could probably do that ourselves.
If we slow down enough and simply experience our internal workings rather than what's going on around us, sapping all of our energy and our attention. Yeah.
Alexander Pope. That's what I was trying to
Yeah,
think of.
yeah. Let's take a break before my director yells at me, and then we'll come back and talk about other things. Mr. Director, can we take a break? All right, looks like we are back. And for you viewers who missed the opening of the show, Conversations with Dr. Don that you're watching is an ongoing series of 1-hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting people like most of you out there about who they are as unique, one-of-a-kind individuals and whatever it is that we've decided to talk about. And my guest, Charlie Weaver, tonight, who I worked on to get to come on the show. I'm enjoying you so much so far. We've got another half hour to go. And you are indeed quite interesting in many ways. But we won't go into that right now. But let's go into whatever it is that you think may be appropriate just to visit and chat about. You have any thoughts come to mind right now? Because I've got a cheat sheet. We're going to go to it in a bind. What do you want to talk
Obviously, one of the things on probably everybody's mind is Congress.
about? And what else? What else?
Actually, I use that as when somebody says, tell me something is possible, it's not likely to happen. I said, you always remember Congress, and we can move on to something else. But climate change, the things that we have not seen for a long time, or perhaps ever, and out here in Oregon, when I moved out here, I was told that certain things during the winter weather says it doesn't usually do this. And what I've found is that there's no usual in Oregon. Every year is different.
Yes.
Every year is different. I came into a place that had snow and sometimes ice, but it's changing. It's changing. I mean, it gets cold, but the climate is changing. And I think some people have a problem with that change, like it should be what they're accustomed to or what they think it should be forever. But things do change, and we can either embrace the change and move on, or just die.
Then there's climate change, and then there's climate change and global warming. And when people say climate change, I like to probe a little deeper and see what they mean by that. Of course, there's always climate change to some degree or another in the natural evolution of the Earth's existence, Gaia, Mother Earth. But then I think what you're alluding to is a climate change caused by human behavior.
We are accelerating whatever it may be happening naturally. I think we are accelerating that.
Do you think that typhoon that hit the Philippines and the one that hit the east coast of the U.S., are those indications of global warming and climate change?
I think they are. I really do. I think they are. We keep dancing and moving to the next floor when the waters are rising, saying, it's not a problem. But again, now we have this fracking. Now, I don't know. I have a feeling that it's about money. Of course, we get money out of this.
Yeah.
What happens down the road? I don't think there's any concern about it, not because it's not happening now. I'm getting the money, so we keep doing these things. We keep doing things that we're not going to destroy the earth. We will destroy ourselves and the earth will reclaim itself at some point, obviously, but we are not taking ownership or responsibility, if you will, for our actions on this globe.
Probing a little deeper, you're saying we. You've said we about 4 times in the last 30 seconds. Who's the we you're talking about?
The people on this planet. Obviously not everybody is in this, but we, those people who are not being more forthright and trying to stop some of those things, who may have to bear some of the responsibility as well.
So who could stop those things from going on?
The people, only, probably at this point, only the people who are doing it. Or
Which
if
people?
we are,
and this is the last time
yeah,
I'm pressing
yeah.
you.
If we
I'm
are,
talking-
as individuals, if we are willing to not buy into things that someone tells us we must buy into in terms of products and services that affect us otherwise, then it might not work. It might not, they may not do those kinds of things. But when there is money involved, those individuals who are able to generate capital by doing that, those are the we's that are going to keep these things going.
Oh, so we're getting to a more understandable we in reality. Is it you and I, people like us, ordinary citizens like us, that are in control, that manage to pass the laws and the controls that have something to do with global warming and climate change? It's the super rich, it's the corporatocracy, it's the ruling elite.
Absolutely. I think in some part we have sat idly by and let them do it. As a matter of fact, when we see politicians, we see businesses do things that are going to affect us down the road or affecting us right now, and we say, what can I do about it? There's nothing I can do about it.
We being ordinary
Every
citizens.
citizen.
I like to make a distinction
Yeah.
between that ruling elite
Right.
and ordinary citizens like you and I.
Yeah.
Of course, you got some coffee cans in the backyard with a whole bunch of money stashed in there, don't you?
Yeah, right. Those people with all the money are not going to be able to success if we as individuals, ordinary citizens,
Yeah.
were to band together and say no more.
Okay.
We can do this by our vote now, which brings up another problem for me, and this is
Lay it on me.
the voting system now, where we have when we don't really vote.
Representative.
Yeah, we don't.
Government.
The college, the electoral college.
Yes.
Yeah, this nation communicates enough, much too much now. We really don't need an electoral college. We don't need that. Those individuals then can literally change things if they chose to, even though we vote one way and others are not. But yeah.
What you're saying is heresy. You must be some kind of a communist or something.
Maybe. I'd like to get rid of electoral college. I would.
I would too.
I think there are a lot of systems that they have in place, and of course, the people that we vote for, most of them show up at some point and says, "Hey, vote for me." If you don't have the money again, this is where the elite. These are the people who get to run for office because they have the money, and the rest of us say, throw a hat in the ring, and that's about it. It's a hat in the ring, it gets stepped upon, because without the money and the funds to put your name before the faces of a great many people, especially those who have something to gain if they support you, again, elite supporting the elite, we're cut out of this whole system, the ordinary person.
What can we do about that situation?
As in the case with Obama, we can decide, as the African American vote was much, much higher. You know, we can do things if we choose to, rather than sit idly by and tell ourselves, what does my vote come? My vote doesn't mean anything.
Now, you touched a sore spot with me, Barack Obama, and his ideals and his speeches and his thoughts, and I'm convinced his inner beliefs are just beautiful. But for some reason or other, and I have some ideas about what those reasons might be, he's not living what I think his philosophy is. He's catering to and giving in, and perhaps the first reason is to stay alive, because there are people in our country who are interested in taking him out. How important do you think his race is in what's going on now in Congress and in Washington?
Honestly, I think it's extremely important. Back when the Republicans' goal was to make this guy a one-term president.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that didn't happen, so we move on. You were saying that you're not living his ideals or whatever. Now, I don't necessarily agree with everything that what he says, what he's doing rather.
Yeah. Okay.
However, I don't know, as with any president, I don't know what other issues they are trying to balance to get some of the, some good out of this. If you're talking about a politician, that in itself, to me, creates a problem, okay? it's a part of a big elite circles that it's a club.
We had Paul Wellstone. We've got Bernie Sanders. We've got my friend from Georgia, who marched with King, and Walking with the Wind. Black Congressman. His book is just marvelous. He's been there for 30 years or something. He got clubbed in the head and damn near killed marching with Martin Luther King during that era. Let's move on from there. I forgot my point.
Well, is race an issue here? I think
Yes,
race
thank
is
you.
probably the issue. For the most part, this issue has to do with Barack Obama. I think him becoming president really just made this all surface again.
Yes.
In a major way. In a major way. It's been there, and it remains that way. But their denial of it doesn't change anything, because I mean, as far as I can see, that is the one factor that people get their arms around. So it's not because he's black. I just don't like what he's doing.
Yeah.
Well,
both
okay,
of those. Now, so let's look at. There's a few things that he's doing, only a few in my judgment, that are supporting ordinary citizens like you and I. And there's a lot of things he's doing now that are just the opposite. What about this drone situation? We promised to close Guantanamo. And when he's decided that anytime there's an enemy, a potential enemy of U.S. interests, then he has permission and it's okay to go out with a drone and kill him. Do you like that policy of his?
Here's my thinking on this.
Sure.
I don't like the idea of anybody killing anybody else, period.
Yeah.
Okay. We have to make we have to get some kind of a common ground in terms of the things that we want as U.S. citizens, the kind of security we want as U.S. citizens. And does that mean that we take our hands off, we don't do drones, we don't kill people, or we wait for things to happen, or we allow that to happen? Now, we can tell ourselves that that's not going to happen. If without drones, this is not going to happen or whatever. I don't know. Again, it's one of those things where sitting in my armchair, as we have, and watch the war, we say, wow, that's terrible. Those same people who are out there, when they come back, you hear about the rate of suicide among veterans? We're kind of talking out of both sides of our mouths sometimes.
Our government.
Yeah, we're so much, and the public in general as well. We talk about soldiers as heroes, but when they come back here, they're kind of trash. They're just, you're not on the front line anymore, so forget about you. As far as employment and anything else that happens with them.
Well, who's making out this situation going on around the world in America's behavior, pursuing interests of empire? Who's winning in this game that's going on? The people who make the munitions, the big contractors, war equipment manufacturers?
Well, let me ask you this. What do you think happens if there is no war, if there's no military actions or whatever? All the military-industrial complex dies. Money. It's always about the money. I mean, it may be a factor in the death of a number of politicians, even Kennedy or his brother or Martin Luther King, who was about to get into this Vietnam thing. Mm-hmm. No, you're going to affect my money now? I'm not saying that was it, but the point is the military-industrial complex, if it shuts down, there are a lot of people being employed there. There are a lot of people making money off munitions and building these airplanes and things that, quite frankly, a lot of it we don't need.
Don't you think there'd be some other employment if the government decided to provide, like FDR did, CCC and WPA and like that? We've been duped.
Absolutely, but we have let too much power slip in the hands of those with the money. And as long as they have the money, They feel it's their game and they are calling the shots. I'll give you a job. You just shut up and do the job, and I'll pay you, and I will make the money. And here's what you're going to do. You're going to make munitions. You're going to build this plane. You're going to do that.
You belong to a political party?
No.
I'm glad, because I was about to delay into the Democratic Party again. So, do you think the American empire is fading?
No, I really don't. I don't think so. We've got a couple of biggies. Still the influence of the British Empire is still pretty evident in the world.
Well, I think the American empire is starting to fade, yeah. Overall, the Obama presidency, do you think he's done a more positive job than a negative job overall?
I think he's done a more positive job. He has tried to do a more positive job than he's actually been allowed to do. For instance, if you don't like somebody if somebody doesn't like you, it makes no difference how good or how bad your policies are. It's just not good either way.
We are approaching the 50th anniversary in a couple more days of the assassination of JFK. What do you think of his assassination? Do you think it was Oswald was the lone assassin, or a conspiracy, or Oswald didn't pull the trigger?
Personally, I don't think it was just Oswald. Whether Oswald actually pulled the trigger or not, but I don't think it was just an Oswald. It seemed that everybody who came behind this got killed too, somehow died. So it was, that's a conspiracy theory, right? So
everybody I talked to, nobody believes that it wasn't a conspiracy. Everyone thinks it's a conspiracy. Who do you think was involved in the killing of Oswald? I personally don't. I think he was really a patsy, like he said he was.
Yeah.
I think it was. Who do you think was involved in that?
I don't know.
I don't know either. I have some idea. Have you seen the movie JFK? I've seen it about 3 or 4 times.
No.
Oliver Stone's movie.
Actually, yes, I have seen that one.
Yeah, powerful.
Yeah.
So please go on.
I don't. Well, as you were saying a little bit ago about the government being able to kill people now, I don't know if this is a government, but there are a lot of powerful people who have money behind them. And it may very well come out, but it could take a long time before it surfaces what really happened. As in some things in the past have already done so, that we know what happened. But with Nixon, it was pretty quick with the Watergate thing.
Yeah. He got caught red-handed.
If somebody other than yourself knows what happened, it's not a secret. And sooner or later, it comes to light. Somebody will say something.
I hope so. It'd be my children or children's children will get the full story of who actually was in the plot to kill him, whether Oswald pulled the trigger or not. Did you see in the news recently that the Swiss experts examined Arafat to determine that he was poisoned by nuclear, not plutonium, another product of nuclear product. He was
poisoned?
Yes, he was poisoned.
Hmm.
Now this was 17 years ago, and the people who did the autopsy then didn't find anything like that or any poison. But to examine a corpse to see what kind of poison may have been. There's so many kinds of poisons, you don't have enough time or enough money to see. But there are ways of killing people where it doesn't leave a trace.
Mm.
But radioactive substance that causes a person's death stays in the bones. So the Swiss scientists said Arafat was murdered. Now, who do you think might have been involved in killing Arafat? I believe he was killed.
Yeah.
And before the scientists said that, I believe he was killed too. My bottom line of my question is, what's going on between the Jews, the Zionists, and the Palestinians? What do you think about that conflict?
Well, until until, I mean, Israel first, they got themselves established because they, you know, they wanted a country. They got their own.
Yeah.
Now, I guess the Palestinians want the same thing, you know, and
It was their country before the
Yeah.
Israelis went in there.
to
the Jews went in here.
yeah, I guess at some point, degree to understand that a lasting peace is going to have to involve some compromise.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
there's going to have to be some compromise. But again, you get governments, and the Israelis, like the U.S., may have gotten things wrong a number of times.
Yeah.
When you go back and look at who we supported in the Middle East in certain times, and now we're fighting them, you know, because, you know, either backing the wrong horse, so to speak, or not going the distance with that horse. We've created some real messes that'll keep coming back at us.
The chickens are coming home to roost.
Basically, I guess that's a
Who was that black guy about 20 years ago was talking about chickens coming home to roost? A big name in politics. Malcolm X.
Malcolm X.
Yeah, the chickens are coming home to roost. And, oh man, this is, keep going here for a few minutes. Fukushima. What do you think about what's happening with Fukushima and nuclear power around the world?
Well, let me put it this way. I would not want to live near a nuclear plant. I know that. I know that Fukushima, that's, I don't know. And the actual truth in terms of the whole story, we don't get to know what's really that whole story, what's going on there, how much leakage and the nature of that leakage.
We have enough of a story for me to have an opinion about it.
Well, we do, but I don't know that at this point it deters anybody from saying, well, it's still the safest, you know, if you want power, this is what we're going to have to do. No, we can and should have pursued alternatives years and years and years ago.
And we can do it starting
we still can do
now.
it. Yeah.
We split the atom, we put a man on the moon. Man, it's unlimited what we can do if just enough time and deciding to tell the fossil fuels industry, just hold your horses now. We're going to still let you make a bunch of money, but you got to hold your horses now. Let us change things over before you destroy the entire planet.
Well, we put a man on the moon, put people on the moon with the less of a computing power than you have in a laptop today. So we can do things, you know, if we choose to.
Yeah. The Swiss government has, I don't know if you read this or not, proposing a law that says the top earner in a corporation can make no more than 12 times what the lowest paid worker in that organization can make. In other words, a wage, a maximum wage permissible. And it's passing in Switzerland. So I have one of my placards I wear, my signs, it says, we need a minimum wage, a maximum wage, and a wealth tax. It's impossible, but we consider the impossible because if we had that, then we wouldn't have the munitions makers and all those guys insisting on making more and more money because they never get enough.
Right.
Their okayness is contingent on having more and more wealth. But if we shut that down for them, maybe then they will agree to have human beings work on civic projects and infrastructure and other things that are beneficial for you and I rather than fattening their coffers.
Absolutely. It's unconscionable that the head of an organization has to make that kind of money. You know, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, in particular when the people who are actually making the machine move.
We're going to have to stop now because they're going to yell at me if we don't stop. But I really appreciate your coming on.
All right, thank you.
And I'd like you to look into that camera over here and tell the viewers some final thoughts and message you have for whatever's on your mind, what we talked about tonight, or anything else that would be of value to the viewers. Tell them in camera 3.
I think that it's time that we as individuals take a stand in terms of fighting for the things that we say we believe in. As long as we keep complaining about things and do nothing, nothing changes, and we just keep complaining.
Thank you again, and now it's time for our director to give us some public service announcements. If you want to watch my shows on the web, Google Don Baham, YouTube. There's hundreds of shows that I've put together over the years. And I want to tell you about the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU. Without the ACLU, our civil liberties would be down the tube worse than they are now. Go to the ACLU and learn about how to join them. And we got to end corporate personhood. We got to amend the Constitution so that we say that corporations are not persons and money is not speech. Yeah. To learn more about the humanists and humanism, I'm a humanist. Go to that website, theamericanhumanist.org, and learn more about humanism. And the Alliance for Democracy is a fine organization here, and it's a national organization. There's a chapter here in Portland where we work on political and social issues to do with the welfare of the general populace, and a good group, so learn what they're about. And the Populist Dialogues, I just told you about a few minutes ago, go to that site and click on AFD videos, and you see my good friend David Delk interviewing people about social and political issues that are, I got to ask you to remember KFC and not Kentucky Fried Chicken. Dr. Don's KFC. Kind, friendly, and charitable. Be kind, be friendly, and be charitable. You too. And you too. And you too. You too. Thanks again for watching, and good night, Mike.